Hope everybody's doing okay today. Looks like kind of got some missing folks. I only have one here in South Boston, and looks like, bless you.
Thank you.
One in Emporia, and Tracy emailed me that she had gotten sick in another class and left, so she's not going to be there in Keysville. So we'll make do with what we've got here. We are going to be starting a section of chapters that are really important on business messages, because part of your all's assessment is creating a portfolio of messages, which I'll be producing or putting some information on Blackboard about those assignments starting next week. So the information that's in these chapters, chapter 5, I think 9 or so, 8 or 9, will deal with business messages and the proper way to use those. Now, there's all different forms of business messages. They can be written or they can be verbal, they can be memos, emails, actual letters, reports, business plans. All of those are examples of business messages. So the chapter we're doing today is dealing with planning for those messages, and then we'll look at each type of message. We'll talk about how you write a good news message, a bad news message, a persuasive message. Some other different types we'll hit along the way. So let's look at our little 2-minute video from the author to get us started, and then we'll talk about planning for business messages. Hopefully your video will come up. You all see your author? Yes. Okay, good. Let me get the closed captioning on this time too. Help out.
I'm the author of the textbook. Today we'll talk about planning business messages, and I'm going to issue you a challenge. In Chapter 5, we begin our discussion of preparing business messages. Here you're introduced to the AIM planning process. AIM acronym, the A is for audience, the I for ideas, and the M for message. In short, the process helps you think about connecting with your audience with solid ideas. At the end of the chapter, you'll read about tone. Tone matters, and it matters a lot. You've often heard people say something to the effect of, it's not what he or she said, it's how he or she said it. That how is all about tone. In the vast majority of business messages, you are aiming for a tone that accomplishes positivity and concern for others. You want to demonstrate a can-do spirit and also show that you genuinely want to meet the needs of others. So this is my challenge for you. Commit to planning. Make it a part of your routine for all important messages. You will shine as a business communicator to the degree that you plan your messages strategically with the interest of your audience in mind. And if you discipline yourself to plan well, you'll also end up saving a lot of time over the course of your career. The very act of planning makes you far more efficient.
Okay, so just an introduction that the chapter is going to approach writing business messages through the AIM, A-I-M steps, which we'll look at in just a minute on the PowerPoints, and then it finishes up with looking at conveying the correct tone in your messages. We're going to see that planning, which this chapter focuses on, is just critical in creating your business messages. A lot of people jump right to the computer or paper and start creating a message right off the bat and don't plan for it. So we're going to see how critical this is in this chapter. So let me get your PowerPoints up and we will take a look at those. Now let's see if I can get the right thing to show up here. Okay, everybody got the PowerPoint up?
Yes.
Wonderful, thank you. You're getting better all the time. All right, so you'll notice that this chapter is an overview chapter that is going to look at the goals of creating a business message and the process that we're going to use to create them. We are going to use this AIM or AIM planning process. Learn how to get the right information together, develop your message, your key points, and then talk about that tone a little bit, that positive tone we want to have in all of our business messages. So let's start off by looking at the process that we're going to use. Using effective business messages is a total process that includes examining, developing, and refining your business ideas. It's going to be done to provide value to your audience. So it also makes it easier for people to collaborate together on projects, increase your productivity. We will use this planning, writing, and reviewing arrow here. We'll talk a little bit about each one of those. Planning is to get the content right. You need to understand who your audience is, gather the right information, and then develop your message. So all of that takes place before you ever put your fingers on the keyboard or put your pen to paper. Then you write, which means you want to set the right tone, okay? You want to deliver a clear, a concise message through using the right styles there, and then focus on a navigational design. And then lastly, you need to double check everything. Get feedback, ensure your message is fair, and make sure you proofread. And that includes even your emails. I noticed one thing about my dean, my supervisor, when she first got promoted into that job, She sent out really fantastic emails. And I was in her office one day when was just finishing up one, and she said, hold on a second, let me read this. She reads every email before she hits the send button, and that has really paid off for her. And it's a tactic that I've tried to assume as well, because you'll be surprised how many mistakes you'll make as you're typing, or maybe your message just doesn't say what you want it to say. All right, so our best business writers are going to look at what their audience needs and figure out the best way to tackle the problems, identify the primary message, and the key points before they even begin doing a draft of the message. This is such an interesting chart here. You will see that poor writers spend very little time planning and a much larger amount of time drafting their message, no time at all reviewing. Average writers plan a little bit more and maybe review some, but they spend a lot of time drafting their message. But the most excellent writers spend, out of these three categories, more time planning their message than they do in drafting and reviewing the message. So the secret is to devote a much higher percentage of time to the planning and the review than to the drafting stage of your messages. So again, we're going to use this AIM planning process here to get us through what is a step that a lot of people don't spend a lot of time on. A stands for your audience analysis, I for information gathering, and M for message development. So we're going to take the A first, the audience analysis. You need to think about what your audience needs, okay, what their priorities are, what their values are before you begin writing. And then envision how they might respond when they get that message. What are they going to think about that message? What are they going to feel about it? How are they going to act on it? So look at your the message readers' benefits and constraints. Okay, consider their values and priorities. Estimate your credibility. We spent so much time about credibility in the very first chapters there, so you'll see that that's going to carry on through this message portion. Anticipate their reactions, and if there are any secondary audiences, somebody else is going to read that material, keep those in mind. Okay, I look at the very first one, identify reader benefits and constraints. That could be something that is extremely important. If you provide something that your reader values, then they're more likely to respond. I get a lot of messages, business messages, emails from students. It just amazes me sometimes when I do get those emails. They cannot possibly think that I'm going to be reading them at 2 a.m. Okay? Or if they know that I'm in a classroom, if they know my schedule and know I'm in a classroom, you can't think I'm possibly going to be reading it at that point. Or even on a Sunday afternoon, I get some downtime as well. So it just, think about when your audience is receiving the message, how are they going to respond to it? Now, for me, for instance, let's say it's Sunday afternoon and I'm taking the afternoon off and an email comes through on my phone. Okay? First of all, I'm going to probably be a little bit irritated because I'm getting an email on a Sunday afternoon when I'm trying to rest. Okay? Secondly, I'm going to be reading it on my phone, which has very little type and it's difficult to read. If it's a business message, it should be sent during business hours so that it can be responded to. Think about that in any business you're in. Would you send your supervisor an email at 2 a.m. and expect them to respond to it? Think about what your readers' values and priorities are. A value is a belief and an ideal that you hold, and a priority involves ranking or assigning importance to things. So what are their priorities? What are their values? I can tell you at 2 a.m. in the morning, I don't care if it's Sunday or any other day, my priority is going to be sleep. Okay, it's not going to be answering somebody's email. All right, so you need to consider that when you're sending a business message. Of course, your credibility is important. When you send a message, your reader is going to judge what your recommendation, request, and your request is. I did get an email about midnight last night from a student asking me to give them an extension on the homework assignment. It's a legitimate request. I mean, the person had something that prohibited, I can't remember what it was, them from getting their homework turned in on time. But if they really thought I was going to wake up, look at the email, go to Blackboard and put in an extension at midnight, they weren't very considerate of my time. It might have been very convenient for them. I mean, they could be working a third shift or they stay up all night long, but you have to consider who your audience is and what their values are. So entry-level professionals have low credibility because they're newcomers on the situation. So you have to realize that you're not going to always be accepted as being a credible source until you do have some experience under your belt. So one of your goals as a professional in business, once you get out and have a job, is to try to gain some of this credibility. Some suggestions here are to set up a time to talk with your boss, ask them if you can take on higher responsibility projects. Make sure you fit in with the corporate culture as what your dress and communication style is. Attend a lot of meetings to get to know as many people as you can, and then create a professional blog about a particular area that interests you. Get your name out there. Get your face out there too. All right. So business ideas get developed by sorting out your issues and objectives, collecting your facts, and making judgments about what the facts mean and imply. So as you are getting ready to communicate this idea through some business message, you need to be able to identify the problem, analyze the problem, and clarify your objectives. When you analyze the problem, be sure that you can rely on facts, not just conjecture, okay? Statements that can be relied on with a fair amount of certainty and that can be observed objectively, those are facts. Conclusions are statements that can be reached based on the facts. A position is a stance that you take based on a set of conclusions. find the next slide to be extremely important when you are structuring your message. Before you begin writing, sit back and say, what am I trying to say? What is the primary message? And if you can put that in a statement that's 15 words or less, that's better because that captures the essence of your message. Then set up the logic, okay? What supports what you're trying to do? What facts do you have supporting that? And what is it you're asking readers to do? Okay, I've gotten many, many messages from students that say, I don't know how to do the homework. Okay, well, that doesn't have any logic in the message structure. If you could support that with, I am getting an answer that my check my answers says is incorrect for question number so-and-so. And then ask them ask yourself, what is it you want the reader to do? Many students don't say what they want me to do. Do they want me to help them? Do they want me to point out where they can find the answer? Do they want me to give them the answer? I mean, there's lots and lots of alternatives. So how will you order the logic of your message? Now, the framework of the message usually follows what we call a direct or a deductive approach. Start off with that primary message, lay out your supporting reasons, and then end up with a call to action. We'll see that we will use a different approach, an indirect or inductive approach when we do things like delivering bad news messages. That usually shows the reasons first and ends up with the primary message. But most of them are going to be direct or deductive. All right. So again, if you want to look at that as sort of a little hierarchy, you want to start with the primary message. Then for each of your points, you want to give evidence to back that up, and then end up with a call to action, the what now. As far as what it physically looks like, we will see the primary message as the topic sentence in your opening paragraph. And then you'll see each of the key points as topic sentences to additional paragraphs in the body. And lastly, you'll see a concluding paragraph which restates the primary message and contains a call to action. Try to avoid some of these inconsistencies. If you have a generalization that's not supported by any facts, that kind of reduces your credibility. If you have weak analogies or if you slant the facts, obviously, in one direction or another. If you have faulty cause and effect claims, if you have either or logic or you are exaggerating, all of those will really cause your message not to be communicated effectively. The tone of your message is the overall evaluation that the reader perceives the writer to have towards the content. You want to be positive. Even if it's a negative message, you can deliver it in a positive way. You want to show concern for others. A can-do, confident attitude. Again, focus on the positive, not the negative traits of any products and services you may have, or you may be referencing in your message. Use diplomatic, constructive terms related to your relationships and interactions. Avoid relying too heavily on the I voice. Don't say I over and over again. Respect the time and autonomy of your readers. Is very much a fact that lengthy messages will be thrown out. Give credit to others. The overall message, underlying message that a person takes away from a communication is called a meta message. It's encoded and decoded as being not only the content of the message, but also the tone and any other signals that are involved. Sometimes you get a mixed message where the content is actually conflicting with the tone or perhaps your nonverbal communication. That is very confusing. Okay? It also turns into a negative message frequently. So again, this chapter is really just a setup for the future next few chapters. However, it is a lead-in for several assignments that you will be getting to actually encompass 25% of your grade. So be very careful to go through these chapters. Look at that aid planning process, and when you are given these assignments, you want to make sure you plan first, and then you do use a positive tone in your message as you develop it. All right, so one thing that I found that the chapter does is to back to the slide. Chapter talks a lot about the oops, lost the screen. Okay, hopefully you're seeing me now. Lost the train of thought there. Oh, the chapter does a really good job about talking about developing and planning for the content in your messages, but does not spend a lot of time giving you some of the basic rules about creating messages. Now, we're going to have a lot of different types of messages in these next chapters. We'll have memos and emails and written reports and letters and so on. The one to give an example of is a memo that is on page 159 in your textbook. It's a memo from Lisa Johnson. No, it's from Letitia Jackson to Jeff Brody with a copy to Lisa Johnson. You can see that it follows the primary message in the first sentence, and then the different key topics, key points underneath, and then a follow-up call to action. You'll have to flip the page to see that, but I found a short video that actually deals with some of the logistical requirements for you creating memos, because you're going to have to create some memos in your homework assignments coming up. So not this particular week, but you'll have some coming up next week. So let me see if I can get to the actual video that I have here. Y'all have a video on the screen, a little.
Yes.
Okay, good. Let me get the closed captioning on there.
In this lesson, you will learn the parts of a basic memo and the best process for writing one. Memos are common in-house messages that help get work done. Successful memos are short and sweet, both concise and reader-friendly. To be reader-friendly, a memo must look good on the page and make information accessible. Note the generous margins, spacing between parts, and use of lists. Basically, every memo has two parts, a heading section and a message. The headings label the message for present and future reference. The 4 standard headings are aligned vertically for clarity. The date line indicates when the memo was written. Use the full date, not abbreviations or other short forms. The to and from lines identify the intended reader and the writer. Make sure to spell these correctly and present them in parallel fashion. As a general rule, use full names. As the writer, initial next to your name to personalize the memo. The subject line identifies the memo's topic in a tightly worded phrase. Avoid vague or confusing wording. Instead, use precise terms that your reader will understand that make the memo memorable and that simplify filing. Capitalize the first word and all main words in your subject line. The second part of the basic memo delivers the message. Keep it focused on the subject. Don't mix 2 or 3 unrelated topics into one memo. Unless your message is very short, it typically follows a 3-part structure. The opening builds on the subject line and usually states your main point. The middle adds supporting details and discussion. And the closing focuses on outcomes, responses, and action. To write such a successful memo, you should follow 4 basic steps: pre-write, draft, revise, and refine. For pre-writing, focus on the following. What is your memo's purpose? What do you want it to achieve? Who is your audience? Who should receive your memo? How can it best serve that audience? Consider, too, secondary readers who might be shown a copy of your memo. What details does your memo need? List any specific details, facts, numbers, and so on that the memo should contain. To draft your memo, develop your list into sentences and paragraphs. First, expand on the subject line by stating your main point early and adding helpful background. Next, offer in a logical order all the key details that your readers need. Last, focus on the result or action that your memo calls for. However, if you are sharing bad news or seeking to be persuasive, it may be best to build up to the main point instead of stating it first. To revise your message, review its content, organization, and tone. Imagine how the reader might respond, and then, for clarity's sake, make any needed changes. To refine your memo, double-check word choice, sentence smoothness, correctness, and overall design. Remember that problems here can distort or confuse your message. Pre-write, draft, revise, and refine. These 4 steps will help you generate a successful memo.
Okay, so I think that was a pretty basic, didn't call it the AIM process, but those 4 steps kind of fit in with the AIM process that your book presents. It also does correspond to the memo that they have on the 2 pages that I mentioned there. So again, if you follow those steps as you are doing the assignments for your portfolio, you should be okay with that. So that's a memo. A little bit later on, we'll look at emails and business letters and business reports, that type of thing. So I think that does a pretty good job of giving you some foothold to get started with these messages that you're going to be doing. So, anybody have any questions about that? We're going to come back and take a look at a couple of items after we take a break, but it didn't take us very long to get through that chapter. It's a little bit shorter since it's an overview chapter. And then chapter 6 that we will do on Thursday deals with making our communication messages more readable. We'll look at the design and the style of those. Anybody got any questions for anything so far? Okay, let's take a break then. I have 2:36. Come back about 5 minutes till 3. We'll probably get out a little bit early today. Make sure everybody is caught up, and we will look at a couple of examples here. I don't have any really, even your chapter doesn't have any nifty videos for us to look at, but we do have some examples for us to look at. So go ahead and take a break, come back about 5 till 3, and then we will pick up with a couple of examples for us to look at. Okay, we can get back at it and perhaps finish up a little bit early here. I'm going to go through some little case information that is on your Connect website. No videos this time, but it'll help reinforce some of the terms. So let me get to that. Let's see if I can share that screen. This see if this shows up. There should be a little video coming up here. The process for creating business messages. Hope that's showing up for everyone.
Learning objective 5.1. Explain the goals of effective business messages and the process for creating them. Writing effective business messages involves a process, one that involves examining, developing, and refining business ideas in a way that provides business value to your audience. The very process that we explain in this section drives excellence in business thinking. Furthermore, it drives collaboration and productivity in your work relationships. The process of developing business messages is fairly straightforward. Plan, draft, and review. You've likely been trained and coached in a similar process many times during your education. Nearly all business professionals have been trained in this process. Yet few business professionals have the proficiency to produce excellent written communication. Creating effective business messages requires discipline and scheduling. Figure 5.1 depicts the 3 stages for creating effective messages. It's worth noting that these stages are not necessarily linear, and they often overlap one another. The first stage is the planning stage, and it involves thinking about the audience, ideas, and message. The goal of this stage is to get the content right, and it requires understanding the needs of the audience, generating the best ideas to address the business issue, and identifying the primary message and its key points. The second stage in creating effective messages, as depicted in Figure 5.1, is the drafting stage, and it involves tone, style, and design. The goal of this stage is to get the delivery right, and it requires setting a positive and other-oriented tone, making the message easy to read and making the message easy to navigate. The third stage in creating effective messages, as depicted in Figure 5.1, is the reviewing stage, and it involves the FAIR tests, proofreading, and getting feedback. The goal is to double-check everything, and it requires ensuring that the communication is fair, considering whether the message is effective, and removing any distraction. Expert writers are more likely to analyze the needs of the audience, generate the best ideas to tackle a problem, and identify the primary message and key points before starting a formal draft of a business message. In contrast, poor and average writers are more likely to begin drafting or writing right away. They often address planning issues.
Okay, that's really just a repeat of the video of the PowerPoints that we had, with someone putting in a few little extra words and so on. What I wanted to get to was the questions down here to make sure everybody was okay. Poor and average writers are more likely to be drafting and writing their business message right away. They often address planning issues as they go. Consequently, they tend to write in a less organized, perhaps even haphazard manner. They generally produce blank and blank messages, and it's the first answer there. Less strategic, less influential messages. So anytime you have a chance to go through these types of questions, I would say that it's very, very helpful for you for study purposes. All right, let's see. I think there is a case study we can look at to kind of get us going here. Okay, this is a case analysis for a new marketing approach, a proposal for a new marketing approach. It focuses in on your audience a little bit, tells you that this audience has some benefits and it has constraints in the planning step that you would need to identify. Look at your issues, gather the information that go along with them before you even start writing, and then create your message. So your case says, after graduating with a degree in marketing, which I'm sure you all are having a hard time seeing that, you were recently hired as a marketing assistant for Kitchen Heaven Marketing. It's a company that produces high-end cutlery sets, cookware, and other kitchen tools. They use direct sales, no retail presence or mass advertising. It has a small e-commerce presence, but 90% of its sales still come from direct sales operations. And those reps are independent contractors. They establish customer networks through acquaintances and contact customers individually to sell products. But their sales are dropping a lot, nearly 40%. And the owner is concerned, of course, but he thinks that it's the recession that is causing the drop in sales. And he's a strong proponent of direct sales, especially high-end products. In the past, he's resisted changing to give a more retail presence. You were hired by the marketing director, Mark Worthland. He thinks that the company's actually in a crisis. He thinks they need a stronger web presence and video tutorials for product use, and he's thinking about a retail presence. And he wanted you to spend a month examining other models that might work. He's recommending the retail idea, but he's coming up with some other things that might not be as costly. And after that month is up, you've identified several strategies, and you came up with some options to that one-on-one direct sales. Okay, said that sales reps could host events, demonstrate products. They need training in social media, listening to the needs of their customers, and more constant contact with the customers. So the boss is happy with you. He wants you to write your ideas up on a 2-page briefing. Okay, so let's look at some questions that go along with this. What is a constraint? What's keeping you from implementing your suggested solution? Looks like we don't have much cash on hand to make changes. It's not that the sales reps are unwilling or that they are resistant to change. This is the cash flow problem. What best summarizes the owner's belief? Okay, the owner thinks that customers purchase lifestyle products from people who they know and who have expertise. So kind of setting the stage for you there. You have a reputation as a newcomer. Okay? Not much real world experience. In the eyes of the owner, how are you going to build your credibility? Meet with Mark about how to establish your credibility with the owner. That's the strategy. Some of these others are good, but this is probably going to get you there faster. Which of the following business challenges do you think the owner is most likely to agree with? He'll probably think that sales have declined because customers have less income than they have in the past. He's more into that recessionary stuff. What is the most effective frame for the report? We should suggest techniques to help our sales reps become more trusted advisors. Okay, so that has to do with you taking the facts and assessing the situation and coming up with a recommendation. So which one of the call to action statements, that's going to be the very last part of your report, will gain a favorable response? Please let me know when you can meet with Mark and me to discuss these strategies further. Nice way to end it. All right, let's look at some examples of when things can go wrong with our business messages. Hold on one second, and I'm going to get to the right page here.
Burritos for lunch.
This is kind of funny. This one is actual business messages that went wrong. And some pretty important people, too. So.
Are you having burritos for lunch?
Cooking something.
The question is whether we're going to go forward tomorrow or we're going to go past to the back.
What we've got here is failure to communicate.
What's the most inspiring thing I've ever said to you? Don't be an idiot.
You hit reply all. I hate to do this, but we have to eliminate some positions, and yours is one of them. It's hard for me to explain why that was the case. Take my word for it. Our profits are the highest they have been in my history.
But maybe I need to be even approachable.
All we need now is to get the stuff translated into every language.
This is the German Coast Guard. What are you thinking about?
Reached, and it is time.
So you're highly motivated and energetic.
Oh my God!
911, what is your emergency, please?
Yes, please help us. I think he's dead.
I need you to make sure that
Well, I can do that. That would.
In conclusion, I just
Okay. I hope some of those things will not happen to you all. Let me do one more, and this is one that I include in a lot of my classes. This is a bad email reply. If you've had me for another class, I'm sure you have seen this before. But it really does drive home.
class from Carton Rules 99 at yahoo.com. Hey, hey yourself. Probably not the best way to start an email.
We don't see it.
Oh, don't see it? Okay, hold on.
Professor's name here, dear Mr. Miss.
Go back.
Okay.
They got it now?
Yeah.
All right, let me get him bigger again.
This is class from Carton Rules 99 at yahoo.com. Hey, hey yourself. Probably not the best way to start an email to a professor for the first time. You may want to put maybe the professor's name here, dear Mr. Miss So-and-so. Okay, I am in your class this semester, but I missed the first 4 days due to some unexpected problems with work and family. Wink. Okay, first of all, if your class has met 4 days, that's either 1 to 2 weeks. You probably should have emailed me earlier with this. plus awake. That's to imply that something in the previous sentence, there was an innuendo or something cute in it, and I can find neither. It's like putting quotes around work and family. I would like to, number 2, make up the word in letter U. See, this is just laziness. You save yourself 1 or 2 keystrokes by doing this. It says more about your character and commitment to work by typing this in our first impression here. I would like to make up the word if you can send me the syllabus and the handouts. Thank you. Okay, again, we're 1 to 2 weeks into class now, and you're asking me for the syllabus and the initial handouts. You might want to see if that was available online. Most college professors have online presences where you can check this. And also if I missed any important info. Okay, luckily we've only been watching YouTube videos of kittens since you missed class. Are you kidding me? You've seen 4 to 8 hours of content. I don't know how I can give that to you in this email. And obviously you haven't done anything for the class yet. I don't even know where to begin. Okay, how is this going to end here? Will we be needing the book this semester because I am on a budget? LOL. You caught me there. I only assigned the book to cost people money. Didn't pay to suffer it. Are you kidding me? I give you the book because that's where the problems come from. That's where the information comes from. I assigned the book because I know it's important and I know books are expensive, but I assigned the book because it is necessary for class. And it's LOL, first of all, you and I are not in a relationship yet where we can just chuckle and laugh about things. And also, should I be laughing that you're on a budget? I am on a budget. Laugh out loud. That is very insensitive, and I don't know if you're trying to be funny or if you're just not thinking things through. Who are you? THX! Oh, great. I have no idea who you are. And I know you probably wanted to say thanks, but I don't know who to thank. I could probably figure out who you are because you've been gone for so much and I do take attendance. But this is completely inappropriate. And I could reply to this email, but I'm just not in an emotional state where I should do this. It's going to be best for both of us if we just take this and file it right over here in this folder. Yeah. Oh, so much better.
Okay. Hope you enjoyed that. It does bring home a few points, though. And I'm hoping that we'll see where there are some grave errors being made in some business communication, and communication between an instructor and a student is a form of business communication. So I think we are done today. Would you like to leave early? You want me to stay here and make up some more stuff for you?
No.
Ready to go? All right. Well, Thursday it starts getting a little bit deeper, so we'll come back and talk about business messages and how to a little bit better. So I will see you Thursday.